All right, Rob Story, welcome.
And you? Good to see you, Tom.
Good to see you. Thank you so much for coming on. I really do appreciate your time, Rob. I really do.
No problem.
So, uh, Rob and I are going to be talking business today from the very, very basics. Why would you start a business? How to get a business going, and all the way through to building a vast empire with FTSE 100 clients, if you like, through to projects that are in the millions, hundreds of millions, or even billions. Rob, I believe you've done quite a bit of that in your time. So, with your insight and your experience and your knowledge, I do believe you're someone that can help us answer some of those questions. But to get us started, Rob, yeah, if you wouldn't mind just sort of giving us your background and tell us a little bit about yourself, that'd be great.
Okay, so I'm Rob Story. I'm currently chairman of Servitor, which is an IT services sort of systems integration type business and development business. I started off in life working in the Inland Revenue, working in a local office in the northeast of England. Not very, not very inspiring, really. And just through a quirk of fate, I got involved with the Inland Revenue in their IT change program, which was probably one of the biggest national programs, maybe even in Western Europe at the time. So I ended up, by happenstance, just working with a bunch of amazing people who were both good fun to be with, very bright, and had a lot of had a lot of vision about how you can re-engineer. And I think at the time, the revenue had a staff base of about, say, 80 odd thousand. And by the time we finished implementing a number of major business re-engineering programs, their staff count was down to 40 something thousand. So pretty well tipped the business on its head in the space of about 8 or 10 years. And that was really a fantastic bedrock for big programs, business change, how IT supports business change, what business change does to an organization. It was an amazing place to be, but also safe, because you weren't going to get thrown out the door because you're a permanent civil servant and you've got a job for life and a pension, and it wasn't profit motivated, so we tended to do what was best rather than what was margin driven. It was just a good place to be brought up in a big IT background, and it served me well in the end. Although at the time it didn't feel like it, but it was a foundation for a lot of what I did later on, which then involved, I resigned. I set up on my own as a contractor. I then ended up working for a few big IT companies like Bull, who have now disappeared, ICL, who've now disappeared, and then ultimately setting up with a couple of other guys, co-founded our own business, which we were very, very successful with. Flogged it to BT, and since then I've been sort of part-time chairman. So there's a sort of 60-second shot through from being 25 to 71, and here I am.
Amazing. When you were at the Inland Revenue, Rob, how, for want of a better way of putting it, how high up were you? Like you talk about it like you were just a little bit like you were just a guy there, but I'm assuming you were sort of at that sort of
Yeah, I mean,
almost board level.
no, nowhere near that. I was a senior civil servant when I left, but I actually came in on their executive officer graduate entrance scheme, so pretty low down really.
Okay.
And then at the local level, sort of worked my way up. I was one of the youngest guys in the country when I got promoted and moved to London, but it's not somewhere you move on very quickly. It's like all civil service careers, I think they're kind of a bit long and drawn out. But the reason why I left was, they didn't have like a career structure that coped with either your ambition or your skill. And the only way really to get any value out of the skills you acquired was to go somewhere else, to go into private practice. So that in the big organisations like this at board level, from my experience, they're predominantly Oxbridge type, verging on academic rather than great business practitioners. Although it certainly was in my time. Bearing in mind, I left in my probably be my mid-40s.
How long were you there for?
I was in the revenue for over 25 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Were you? You said that you used the word ambition. Like, were you within the revenue? Were you really ambitious? Like, did you intend to go as high as you could go? Did you intend to get to the top, for example?
No, I wasn't really.
No.
That didn't come till later. I mean, for kids watching this, I wouldn't be too worried and parents wouldn't be too worried if the kids aren't too ambitious at 21, because I think for a lot of people they work it out in the 30s or early 40s for some people. And
So I'm in my interesting you say that. I'm in my mid-30s now, and I feel like I'm just kind of working it all out
yeah,
now, to be honest. And I should probably be, based on what you just said, I should probably be a little bit easier on my 3-year-old. I'm already trying to get her ambitious to do big things. But
yeah. Well, I promise you, she'll win.
yeah, probably right, no doubt. She
Yeah,
usually
it's
does.
like I think when you finish studying whatever you're studying, it's pretty unusual if you know exactly what you want to do, unless you're in something which has a clear, I come out of college, I do that, and I do that for the rest of my life. You don't really know what you want to do then, and especially in a wider business context where your qualifications can have you doing anything from, like Rich, for example. My lad, he's got a degree in zoology, and
I didn't know that. Okay.
he's running an IT business. Generalist type things are pretty difficult, I think, to have this is what I'm going to be when I'm 25, 35, 45.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work that way. It doesn't work like.
I think maybe if you're born a particular, with a particular gift, like a gifted sportsman, for example, or maybe a gifted artist, it might be the road might be a little bit more clear to you.
Yeah.
But for the rest of us, for me, for example, I'd sort of describe my 20s as a trial and error period. I sort of just tried. It wasn't necessarily a conscious strategy at the time, although it kind of was. It's certainly I'm certainly aware of that now. But I tried so many different things in my 20s, tried, failed, succeeded.
Yeah.
And more than my 20s, it kind of merged into my 30s before I sort of really understood, had done enough things in life, lived long enough to sort of, get a good idea of what it is I want to do. Quote unquote. But going back to when you were going all the way back to when you were a child, then Rob, did you have a vision? Like, was it always obvious to you that did you always want to do something big in business or be successful?
Yeah, I wanted to be a footballer.
Did you? Okay.
I'm an abject failure because I was all right, and I broke my leg twice in one season. I broke my leg twice, sort of within. It's a 6-week mend on a broken leg. Broke my leg, and something like 9 weeks later, broke it again, and that was the end of the football. I started playing golf at 14, so then I wanted to be a professional golfer. I was playing off 4 by the time I was 18. I thought I could do it, and then really you can't make any money at that. It's like the best you're going to end up, unless you're Tiger Woods, is running the counter in the bar at some golf club.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I just. I got married at 19. I didn't know where I was going really. I was failed at what I really wanted to do, which was be a sportsman.
Yeah.
I didn't really know what I wanted to do work wise. I met my first wife at uni. I was all too young, and again didn't know what what life was all about, really. So now I was pretty well one of these guys that just fell into things for quite a while. That seems all right. I'll do that. I had no real ambition and no real drive until I was much older, and yet,
Would that be in your 30s, Rob?
yeah,
Yeah.
uh,
Okay.
yeah. Well, really, it was when. So when I got to typically in the revenue, they say, "Oh, congratulations, you've been promoted," and they compulsorily transfer you to somewhere that you don't necessarily want to go, and you don't get any say in it. Again,
Congratulations, you're moving up here.
yeah, congratulations, I'm moving you to Warrington. Um, for
Yeah.
those who may be watching, who may work for the revenue, I'm sure it's not like that now, but it was then. Promise me, I promise you, it was then. And what really made the difference was I get the cunningly worded invitation about you being promoted, but it was like, would you come for an interview to Telford, which is that was their headquarters for their development centre. Now, this is really weird. Nobody gets interviews; you get told. So, I toddled down, and they were explaining what they were doing, which was this massive program of change, and all sounded very exciting. And there's a few things I know absolutely nothing about IT. You don't need to know anything about IT. It's predominantly about business change, business re-engineering, as they called it. And but like, why me? It's, well, you're born in the 50s. All the other people that to get to that grade, typically people have been born like in their early in the like 1940 to 1947, and they found that they didn't have an appetite for radical thinking and getting out the box, and nothing gets in the way. Whereas the younger guys, they weren't usually young enough to be promoted, but they had less hang-ups about how we've always done it this way, so let's keep doing it this
Yeah.
way.
Sure.
And
I get you.
that was an amazing environment to be in, really, because you're suddenly working with a bunch of men and women that are similar age to you, and really, really make you think. You're all challenging each other,
I kind
and
of bring the best out of you.
yeah, and it was a proper sort of nursery for talent, really. And that's when I realised, I could do more, and there's more to life than being a taxman in a local office or whatever. So that kind of changed my thinking a lot, really. Yeah, and that was
From
back. So no great vision, no plan, all by accident, and
It's amazing to hear that, Rob, because when I met you, um, you you were already kind of building your company, which we'll get into in a minute, i3IT, into what it became, which was a big enterprise
yeah,
that you ended up selling to BT. Sorry, so my memory of you, and I appreciate I'm a little bit younger, and I didn't know your history. It's amazing to hear it. My memory of you growing up and watching you build this business with the other directors was uh, this person was born to do this. I guess it just I mentioned to you before we started uh, self-esteem. It's I think I didn't realize it at the time. I may have felt it, but thinking about it now, what sort of inspired me, uh, how you inspired me, and how the other directors and founders inspired me was just your level of self belief, self esteem, really. Self worth is possibly a better word. There was, I mean, maybe it was in my head, I don't know, but there was sort of everybody else doing a good job and getting paid well, but then there was you, you three, or however many, I think there was three or four of you that founded i3IT. And you guys were like superstars. It's just you were running, well, you were running the show literally, but socially you were it was almost like I couldn't help but naturally assume that these people were always going to be successful businessmen, and they were just waiting for reality almost to catch up with that notion.
Yeah,
It would never have occurred to me that because you were so cool and so confident, and you were running again this big enterprise. It really at the time I would have been in my teens, early teens, so
yeah, yeah,
it was awe inspiring. And but to hear that it was from what you've said, by and large by accident, or
yeah.
certainly without vision in the
Um,
beginning, it's shocking and amazing to me at the same time.
yeah. Well, it's like I look. I know, I know what an impact my childhood had because like my mum died a few years ago and my dad died just before Christmas. So I've done a bit of, you do a little bit of digging around about what you're going to say at the funeral, sort of thing. So it's not, it is actually fairly topical, even though it's 70 years old. But my dad had one ambition for me, which was don't get dirty at work. He worked in the steelworks. He was an apprentice in the steelworks. He had no qualifications. And he'd left school at 15. My mum worked in a wire mill in some shithole in Edinburgh called Scrappy Castle. She was smoking 30 fags a day at 14. I mean, these were real working class people. I was born in a house which didn't have an inside toilet or a bath, but my dad's influence wasn't great, I would say, other than he'd like me to come home clean because he used to come home filthy. But I was brought up.
That would be him saying almost, become a white collar worker as opposed to a
Yeah,
blue
yeah,
collar worker. Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was. But the house was full of women because there was my mum moved down to Yorkshire when she got married to my dad. And dad was in the army in Scotland. But so my dad's sister was in the house. My grandma was in the house, and living like 3 doors away was my grandma's sister, who had like 3 daughters. So I was surrounded by women,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah,
And I know, and I've been told that like I was the only one. The sun shone out my arse. I could do no wrong, and nothing was beyond me. That was how I was. That was how I was brought up in this environment of like you can do anything you want, and that did give me a kind of confidence and self belief. I think that upbringing did
yeah.
give me a confidence and self belief that they instilled in me through my living in that sort of extended family with a bagload of women. They just, I guess, created the confidence that I had in myself, and I don't think that ever went away.
Yeah, so
So,
you've always had it from that young age, and I'm guessing you are very young at this point.
oh yeah, I mean, I'm under 5,
Oh wow, okay, okay.
but it went on. It went on through. I mean, my aunties, they were still sort of in daily part of your life, right through junior school, and then of course I was the only kid in our family to pass the 11 plus first time. I went the first one to go to grammar school. It was like they just thought I walked on water, and I've always
Yeah.
been a bastard, to be honest. It's like, but I know you make your own luck, but I've been quite fortunate in that respect. But they just they just like picked me up and made me feel good, and the polar opposite. So Eileen, who you also know and love, and is gorgeous. It was a Catholic upbringing, and she was always taught that the bigger you are, the harder you fall. Don't go getting too big for you. She was always being pushed down.
This is who? Sorry.
This is Eileen.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, okay, okay.
She was always being pushed down. With her family were always like, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do the
Yeah.
other. Don't be too big for your boots. So she doesn't have the same level of confidence and self worth, and I think all that comes from your upbringing,
No, for
And
sure. Yeah. Well, you said you went to grammar school, so you were smart as well. You had
Apparently, yeah.
apparently.
But I couldn't pass O level maths, but as you know, I'm like really good with money. But yeah, I still don't have O level maths. But I'll tell you why.
You sound quite proud of that.
Tell
I
you.
would be.
So my academic achievement is all based on whether I like the teacher or not. I've
Okay.
got I've got the O levels and the A levels in the subjects where I like the guy or the woman. I've got blank failures where they massively got on my tits. I just, well, I'm not. That's another aspect of me, really. Um, if I don't, if I don't get on, I don't bother.
You don't engage. Yeah, I call it the interface. I call it, there's the knowledge and then there's the interface. The
Yeah,
knowledge for the most part is in whatever it may be, but there's only so much knowledge out there. There's only so much belief out there. Past that, it comes down to to information was the word I was looking for. Knowledge and information. Past that, it comes down to the interface. How is it being transferred into you? And
yeah,
if it's a bad interface, it's a bad
yeah.
interface.
So
Uh,
my
uh,
academia is entirely based on whether I like the people or not.
so, but sorry you lost your parents, Rob.
I
Um,
remember my dad was 92. He'd had a fair old innings. Yeah, yeah. He'd
I
gone.
imagine.
Elvis had left the building years ago. He's had
Oh,
dementia for about
okay.
15, 16 years. Yeah,
Well,
didn't know how.
I'm sure he lived long enough and was alert long enough to see you succeed the way that you did, and I'm sure he was very proud.
You know, he didn't.
Okay.
I mean, we even when he very rapidly declined and still thought I worked for the revenue. You know,
Oh, okay.
it annoyingly when you go out and tell everybody that I'm a tax man, it's like and they're not popular people, as you know, at the best of times. so,
If you're
so
behind, maybe not. Yeah.
yeah, he wasn't my best advocate, my dad. Um, but no, he'd been struggling a long time, and I mean when I say he's had it an awful long time, but uh, he didn't know who any of us were for probably the past 8 years, something like that. But anyway, don't worry. I
That's all
appreciate
right.
it, but don't worry. Yeah, yeah.
So pulling it, fast forwarding then, Rob, to to when you started your business, when you started, your company, i3IT. That can we talk? Can you tell us a little bit about how that came to be, how it started, what was the idea of it, and then how
Uh,
did you actually get it going?
so between being a senior civil servant and chief exec of I3, I had a couple of iterations of either contracting and or permie in a private sector organisation, and that started off because you realise you can earn a lot more money than being a civil servant if you're freelancing, and we had all these freelance. Imagine in the revenue going through this massive change program. We had freelancers and consultants coming through the door every day, and you see some of them and you think I could learn something from them, and you see others and you think what a complete waste of space on a lot of money. So that again gives you the confidence like I can do that.
Right.
I could, and that's what it was. I left on the Friday and I trebled my salary on the Monday. It was that kind of thing that got me out. But from that to like setting up your own business was the catalyst. The catalyst to that was again happenstance. We were there were five of us that set the business up, five founders, and at the time we were all working in ICL, who'd been bought out by Fujitsu, and a number of things happened in that transition from ICL, a UK company, to Fujitsu, a Japanese company, and cultural changes and all that sort of stuff, which it got a few people thinking I don't like being where I am. At that particular point in time, I was I was COO of a large program division, so a chunk within ICL. It had maybe I don't know the numbers offhand now, but maybe there were 1,000 permies and 400 contractors,
Wow. Okay.
and we were delivering 5 or 6 really big PFI programs. So a lot of people, a lot of stuff going on. The senior management changed. Kind of. I went on holiday. Came back 2 weeks later, and the board had gone. There's a lot of change suddenly happening, and the new, that this is something I've tried to pass on to the kids. When the new regime arrives, it's not a good thing to be attached to the old regime. But they don't seem to be able to make a graceful exit for you. They made things like unbelievably difficult. An example was I was given the task of maintaining the margin in the P&L for this big program, but I had to get rid of all outside cost, including all the contractors. Well, the contractors, in the main, were the ones that delivered most of the value.
Right.
And so I was saying to the CEO at the time, he's like, I can't do that. I can't sack all the contractors, like 400 of them, and still deliver this program. Well, that's your challenge, get on with it. So we were already unsettled. The 5 of us kind of decided we would go off and start something on our own. And it was kind of an opportune thing when, what we would do is create a business that kind of designed and built big programs because they were very prone to failure, and we worked on such a lot of them. We got quite good at it.
Yeah.
And most people in their career only get to go through it once. So if you're client side, and you're working at the revenue or customs or department of trade, you go through one of these big things once.
Yes.
But we were doing 3 at once in an 18 period. So we had loads more experience. So we decided there was a market there, and but that market would be quite volatile. So most of our initial setup would be contractors and freelancers, but we'd only deal with the ones that we knew and trusted. There were no strangers in our business. So, being the good guy that I am, being told to get rid of all the contractors, I took my black book with about 800 contractors in it that had worked for me over the years, all graded A, B, and C, and I walked out of ICL with basically with a resource list of some of the best guys in the country, and that's what we used.
Were largely available because they just been made redundant, or been given the boot.
So ICL's totally unreasonable and outrageous demands actually prompted the creation of something which turned into something amazing.
Yeah.
So we there were 5 of us originally. One of the guys sadly killed himself. One of the guys, this is right at the end. One of the guys retired. That left 3 of us. I was the chief exec, and I did all of the negotiation with BT about the eventual sale. So we set up in 2000 with nothing, no money, no revenue, no bank, no money in the bank.
Just a black book and 5 guys that wanted to make
this black bunch of guys. Yeah, I didn't even have the names right. We had things like big tall guy that does CM, and short blonde head guy that's good at, you know what I mean? It's like it was pathetic, really. We got a bit more organised once we had Valerie and Sue and what have you telling us to behave ourselves, because it was quite unstructured. But we went from nothing in 2000 to a 45 million turnover by 2006 in 6 years, and in 2008 we sold it to BT. largely because the conversation went to the chief exec of BT at the time, which I thought was quite funny. You know, I'm a welder's lad from Middlesbrough with 5 O-levels, and I'm chatting to the chief exec of,
Yeah.
of BT.
Was it a moment where, was it one of those moments where you're like,
Yeah.
how did this happen? When did this happen? Yeah.
I said to him, where I come from, we have a saying, Ben, which is shy Ben's getting out. And he was Dutch. He said, what does that mean? I said, it means you're virtually renting my company. Why don't you buy it?
Right.
And he said, why should I? And I said, because I'm on 2 weeks' notice and I'm on a day rate. And if somebody offers me another £5 a day, I can leave in 2 weeks. And the guy shat himself and bought the business because we were critical to what they were doing. And it wasn't a blackmail or arm twisting thing.
Oh, so as in i3IT could pull out
we were
not you personally per se, the company could pull out a day at 2 weeks no. Oh, you, okay.
Me personally, I was on a 2-week contract and paid by the day.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, that would have been, obviously if I'd have gone, the i3 would have gone, kind of thing. So that was a major deal and a major risk, and it was just an observation to him. Rather, the observation was brought about because it was becoming a risk to us. They were the only customer we had by the end because we poured everything into it for them. So yeah, I said, you're virtually renting my company. Why don't you buy it? Was more risk mitigation for me. All our eggs in one basket. And it was risk mitigation for him because we were saving them an absolute fortune. They were what it
would have cost to deliver over the grand scheme of things would have been okay.
Yeah, their cost to complete when we took over versus what we ended up spending when we finished. It more than paid for what they paid for i3. It was a bargain all round. We did well out of it. They did well out of it. And happy days for everybody. But again, you know, that's not a plan or a vision. You know, a lot of people would look at that and say, well, BT didn't actually buy anything because we were just a bunch of guys. But
an address book almost. And more than that, you know, they
didn't buy a revenue stream, they didn't buy a product, they didn't buy a service, but they bought certainty against a program,
a crucial program.
From signing it to 6 months in, they doubled their cost. To finish, and that's the sort of thing where, you know, when that becomes official, you know, you've got to go to the city, and it becomes something that affects the share price, and none of the board get any of their bonuses because their options are down the toilet. You know, it's a big deal for them. So you've really got people's attention when you've got an issue like that, and we were fixing it. So it was key for them to retain us. And what he hadn't realised was we really had no retention motivation whatsoever. You know, the guys down here who do the procurement and the contracting and all the rest of it, they think, I've got a great deal, you know, I've screwed him down to so much a day and he's on it, and we can get rid of him whenever we want. That's the procurement view. The resourcing view. The guy who's running the business is going, you've done what? You mean these guys could leave in 2 weeks? You know, that's not a deal. That's not a bargain. I've got a program that's got 12 months to run, and they're running it. What I'm going to do for the next 11 months? You know, it's another thing we saw a lot of. You know, you're in the belly of these businesses, and you get to see all the dirty washing, and you do see a lot of where the commercial and contractual side really doesn't support the business and the business operation. They're not motivated on the same things, and when you're not motivated on the same things, I promise you don't pull in the same direction. You know, this becomes like a tug of war rather than
conflicting interests.
Yeah, massive, absolutely massive, and all based on, you know, I had a couple of interesting intervening things with i3. We had a couple of unsolicited offers to buy it from from other organisations, and one of them was a hardware, predominantly a hardware manufacturer, and wanted to become more of a services business. And the offer was to go. I would go to San Jose. I would play golf at Pebble Beach for the weekend. Meet one of the guys that's a legend in the industry. I'm not going to say his name. And I said, no, I'm not going. Why not? It's a weekend of my life I won't get back. You won't buy this and we won't sell it to you. If you continue bonusing your guys to sell tin, they're going to keep selling tin. You know what I mean? Your organisation isn't actually motivated to turn into a service business because you incentivise everybody to keep selling hardware. And no matter what your ambition is, no matter what your ethics are, no matter what your morals are, if that's how you pay somebody, that's how they'll behave. Nothing else really matters. You might have one or two.
So it's almost like there's a that again, it's conflicting interests, but the vision doesn't necessarily meet how the money's being spent.
No,
In as much as if you motivate, you can say one thing, but if you're paying them to do another,
yeah.
it's going to go
Well,
off.
you say I might be digressing from
No, not at all.
where we were going, but so when we set up, our main competition were people like Deloitte, and the way they typically operated at the time was you'd have a client manager or an account director or whatever, and they got paid and bonused on getting more people into the account. So if you've got a problem, the answer was always, what you need is more of us. So the way I structured our pricing mechanism was, first of all, the typical competition would price on a 60-65% utilization. We priced on 90. They'd have an office and overhead and all that kind of stuff. We didn't. If you weren't on site, you worked at home. The only consolation to that we made was Sue Scholes, who was our commercial director. We bought her a big garden shed so she could have a nice office at the end of her garden. But we didn't have any accommodation or any offices. But the biggest thing
No
was
fancy private jets to pay for.
no,
Or just
still
yourselves.
haven't got one of them, damn it. But the biggest difference was, we said to the guys, if your suggestion to the problem is more of us, you're not going to get bonused. You're going to get bonused if the customer comes back to us and says, I want to keep that guy. He's so good and he's so useful and I get such good value out of him that I want to extend him. So they got bonused by the customer actually wanting to utilize them for more and more days.
Yeah.
What that actually meant was the customer never felt as if we were like fleecing him with, he's a glossy report and you need 3 consultants more to do the thing, or the problem's always, the answer to the problem is always, you need more of this. And I never really sold to the client. The client bought from us because he was getting quite a lot of value. The costs were lower than the big guys because we didn't have the overheads, and we had higher utilization factors. So we were cheaper, but like much better. And also, I'd always promised them that we wouldn't give them a guy that was useless, because all of the people that we took on had worked for us before, or we knew them, or they'd worked with somebody whose opinion and judgment we trusted. So it was really quite a kind of neat little organisation, and it flew. It flew.
Yeah,
Different model.
different. Yeah, I'm trying to pull bits out of that, Rob, and see if it's you know, you could turn that into, well, not so much turn it into, I was going to say turn it into a replicatable process. You can because you did that, but I'm trying to, trying to articulate the process there. Um, it's it's almost like playing chess, as in, how many moves ahead are you? Rather than just seeing
Yeah,
things at
yeah.
face value, how many moves ahead are you? Well, not so much ahead, but yeah, how many moves ahead are you? As in, you mentioned about, you know, you know, what motivate, how are you paying somebody? That's what's, that's what they're going to be motivated to do versus what are you, what's the grand vision? It's
Well,
almost,
like for the customer, what I'm doing in that scenario is I'm really helping him manage his risk. So if you go back to the ICL example where we had a big catalogue of contractors. Uh, so ICL would have a recruitment organisation, resourcing organisation. So I need 2 Oracle engineers. So you put out a request for 2 Oracle engineers. They send you 10 CVs. You pick 2 of those out of 10, and if they shit, it's your problem. And I'm saying to the recruiting people, what are you doing for your money? You're just sending me like 10
CVs.
CVs.
You're a glorified filter.
I'm taking all, I'm making all the decisions, and I'm taking all the risk. And if they're hopeless, I've got to go through the process again and try and find another. And that at the time, I had to do that because that was the business I was in. That was the company I was in. But I didn't like it. It was crap. So what I used to say to the clients was, like, we know all these guys. When you've got a job, and if we get this wrong, it's because you haven't told me what the job is properly.
Right.
We spec this out. I promise you'll get a guy in there that won't let you down.
Yeah.
And you're not, you might be paying like 300 quid a day or something like that, which, sorry, I'm showing my age now. You might be paying like £1,000 a day, which might irk you, but it'll be value. You go and do it yourself, and they have done it. They then they go to the market, they recruit 3 guys, they pay 600 quid a day, got 3 people in there, and they're all shit. And it takes them 3 months to find out. It takes
Yeah.
them 2 months to get rid of them, and then it takes them another 2 months to get somebody who's okay. They're 5 months behind. The 130 grand in a hole. You know what I mean? It's like I
And
can,
they're no better off than where they started.
yeah. I stopped
Yep.
all that.
Yep.
I stopped all that to the point where they would. I mean, even even after we'd left some of the clients, you get people who become sort of friends. Really, would ring up and say, "Do you know so and so?" I'm thinking of, I said, and that was how we operated. Really, it was having a knowledge of the people out there, who were the good guys, who were the ones that really knew what they were doing, and also you create a cadre like that, and you'll have heard this said a few times with um, with your dad and what have you. The good guys attract the good guys. It's like there's no doubt about it. If you're really good at what you do, no matter what you're getting paid, and you go and land into a contract and it's full of people who are ineffective idiots, it becomes depressing and they don't stay very long. They like to be in that environment where people are actually very competent and challenging. Just it's all a virtual cycle, you know. And you'll
Yeah.
know from the feel of you'll know from the feel of the place and from your dad that people did like being there. They loved it because it was a great
Oh,
place to be. It's
Dad
exciting.
speaks of it with very fond memories and fun words for
Yeah, it
sure,
was
Rob.
a really,
I can,
really exciting.
yeah. I mean, as an engineer, I can relate to to that as a as a principal engineer, for example, which I am now. I've been in situations where companies, organizations, institutions, big, massive institutions, they often seem to think the way to resolve an issue is just by throwing bodies at the problem.
Yeah.
Of low quality. I don't mean to speak nastily about people, but no, B and C players.
Mm.
I've many times I've been on a project, and it's not going as well as it could go, and they'll come to me. They'll invest. They'll try and find out what's going on, and then before I know it, I've got you know five B and C level engineers turn up, or even worse, 10 graduates, and they're like, "I've given you a load of people there. Go and go and fix the problem." And I said, "That's
Does it?
no." I said that's gonna you're slowing me down. You're gonna make it worse. I tell you what, send me two of the best engineers you have. More than that, I'm going to pick them for you, and we're going to pay them what they want because it's going to get the
Mm.
job done. And it's going to save everything you've said. It's going to save you money in the long run. That you're paying more on a daily basis, or are you? Because if you add it all up, are you actually saving money on a daily basis? I would argue not. But long term, you're certainly going to save money, and you're going to deliver on time, on budget, on quality, and all of that. So yeah, as you were saying that, I can totally relate to what you mean. So it kind of leads me very nicely into a question that I had for you, which was just how important is it to find really good people, to find A players, and not settling for B and C players? And how do you find them? How do you go through the, in my experience, the traumatic process that it is to get these people, and then to motivate them and keep them,
I think
because people at
that,
that level are often in such high demand elsewhere. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
that they are your
yeah,
business. You know, they are your business. As simple as that. How you find them, well, it's quite tricky, and it is through experience and word of mouth and um,
and relationships,
connectivity.
working with them in the past.
Yeah, the one thing, there's a number of theories I have about CVs. Um, like it's very difficult on a CV to work out how much the candidate is lying, but there definitely will be.
Sure.
And I read somewhere in a study that despite doing like psychometric tests and all the rest of it, as successful was sticking a blindfold on and a pin and going up and down the list of names with the pin. The probabilities weren't too far apart between the science of selection and the randomness of it. So it is a very, very, very tricky situation. And and the further you go up, the worse it is.
How do you mean?
Um,
How do you mean the further you go up? As in
well,
the more
the
specialist?
time and the time and effort people put into finding your next CEO or your next COO or your next it's like it's massive, isn't it? And the bigger the organisation, the bigger the problem it's seen, um, and you just have to read the papers periodically to see how spectacularly that goes wrong, and that just filters all the way down through the food chain. Really, there are some there are some spectacular failures in finding your people, and it is it depends what you for me, I'm building a small niche business. We're doing some highly complicated, very public um, programs. Like some of these things, some of these things we've been running, like we're in the papers every day. It can go wrong very, very quickly, very, very badly, um, and it just needs one guy in your organisation to destroy the brand that you've built up over all this time of being successful and 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 being great value and looking after your client. It just takes one idiot that could trash that brand in 24 hours. So it it's something you've got to be really, really careful about. And it kind of it's worse when you're smaller because you've got no excuse. I think some people will maybe give you a fresh air shot. If you've got 500 people working for you in your organisation or 5,000, they kind of think, yeah, well, they're bound to have a couple of idiots in amongst that lot. So you might get you might get a fresh air shot. You might, if you're lucky, you might get two. Down here, you're not going to get any, and rightly so, because you should know everybody. You should know everybody really intimately, and that they are and what they're capable of,
Right.
and make sure you support them, and you make sure that they are able to deploy their capability. Yeah, I mean, I had a golden rule with a lot of the guys. I mean, about support. You've got to have them. You've got to have their backs. It doesn't matter whether permies or contractors or freelancers or associates. You've got to have their backs. You've got to look after them. And
that's not just paying them well, I imagine, Rob. That's really looking after them.
Not just, it's
Yeah.
everything. It's taken an interest. It's been sociable. It's looking after what they're doing, but it's also making sure that there's a discipline there and they know where they stand. I mean, like with a simple mantra: if you come to me with a 6-week problem, so if you come to me with a 3-week problem with 6 weeks to go, we'll have a conversation. We'll sort it out, and we'll do what we need to do to fix it. If you come to me with a 6-week problem with 3 weeks to go, you're fired.
Right.
Right? And that was a great environment to create. So guys knew where they stood. They've got an issue. I mean,
well, it encourages proactivity, doesn't it?
Well, what it does do, we're all trained to fix our, we're all problem solvers, and we're all trained, and we don't like we don't like sharing the problem. We like to say here's the solution. But what that can often happen is the guys are sitting on the problem till you can't fix it, because there's a lot of things you can do, but you can't always get your time back. You can't reverse. You haven't got a time capsule. You can't go back 6 weeks. So, get
the money you've spent back or wasted back.
Yeah, all of that. But they knew you were there for them if they had an issue, and it's looking at getting the right guys, looking after them, making them feel valued, and having them as part of your family, regardless of whether they were associates or contractors. Or everybody got the same for us, and it just paid off massively, because people would go over the top for you. If we needed to do something and it was an issue, they'd all be in for it. It was a really sort of productive and
you had each other's backs. You felt safe there.
Yeah, it was a really productive and effective mechanism that we had.
What's huge for me, Rob, and this is receiving this but giving this as well. What's an absolute one of my core values, in fact, is trust. It's complete trust. So there's nothing I hate more. There's nothing that says I don't trust you more. And again, this is giving and receiving this. Then micromanaging somebody. So with me, if I'm tasked with doing a job, from the very, very beginning, I'll clearly define what am I here to contribute? What are you actually asking me to do? And then I will tell them in black and white that this can be done or this can't be done. I'm not the right guy for the job, but this person is, or I can do this, but I can't do it in 6 weeks. I can do it in 12, and whatever. It's going to cost you this much, not that much.
Yeah.
Whatever. If we agree to those terms and I then accept, that's now on me, right? Okay. So you've trusted me to deliver, and I will deliver, or on my shoulders let it be. I will take the blame for it if it goes wrong. What I can't stand is amongst other things micromanagement, because it just tells me, and I'm telling people if I do it, I don't trust you. So it goes back to what I was saying. Don't throw B and C players at the problem. Throw fewer A players that that you trust, and then give them clearly define their tasks, communicate with them on a regular basis, and then trust them to deliver.
There's loads of different little anecdotes that can come out of this. I mean, one of the programs that we were involved in when we started off, there were something close to 1,400 people on the project, and it hadn't delivered a line of code in 6 months. And when I walked into the building,
Gosh.
there were a load of people in there that had worked on other projects I'd been in charge of that I'd fired because they were useless, and they kind of walked up to me and said, "Shall I go now?" As I was walking in the lobby, and I think in a few months we got the head count down from 1,400 to something like 550, and within 4 weeks we were delivering a big drop of code every week. The customer was absolutely delighted because he'd never seen any software for 6 months. Now he was getting a dump every week. In fact, he was struggling to keep up with it. But we were doing that with half the workforce, and it was because they'd gone down a deliberate policy of taking in contractors and freelancers at the bottom of the mark. You know, so if the scale for an Oracle engineer is 300 to 700, whatever it was in those days. Like I said, today it would be 3,000 to 33,000. I don't know. I've been out of the market a long time, but you get my drift.
I do.
They'd be the 300, and we bulleted all them and brought 2 in at 700, and it did the job of 8. It was that thing which you've alluded to as well. That in spades and in real terms, that was happening.
It's the old 80-20 rule, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's not. That's not the trust. That's not the trust issue. I think that it's a trust issue in that these 2 guys will do the job for you. You trust them to do it, and ideally it's because they've done it for you before.
Right.
So it's not the same. You know exactly where you are. But the thing I found with how I've always asked people to put yourself in the other guy's shoes and try and imagine how they're feeling, because that's probably the best way to get an accommodation out of whatever it is you're trying to do. So you get the situation where, for example, your customer can, not always, but can be very, very good at saying, I want an outcome-based requirement in this time, in this space, and off you go, and then spend every minute of his waking day telling you how to do it. Yeah, micromanaging you. I want it output-based. I'm not going to dictate to you. But by the way, I want you to do it like this, and I want you to use that product, and I want you to use that package.
He's on all the meetings.
Yeah.
I often find the people that say, "I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I'm not going to micromanage you," are always the people that are the worst for it.
So, by the same token, then you're sitting there, that just gets completely on your tits, doesn't it? I'm not having that. And by the same token, then you do. So I've now got my second lieutenant and the three heads of work packages over here. Funnily enough, they feel the same when you do that to them.
Yeah, okay.
When you say, here's the job, here's the budget, here's the timescale, you've got the plan, off you go, and then you're telling them what to do and how to do it. It's like, for God's sake, don't be a hypocrite. You know what you're getting over here and how it makes you feel. Imagine how he's feeling, because he's now wearing your shoes and you're the customer, and behave like you want your customer to behave. Behave to him how you want your customer to treat you. And it's understanding those little nuances that keep the guys motivated, engaged, and loyal. And you can trust them with anything. They won't let you down.
And you said put yourself in their shoes, which is absolutely huge, isn't it? Seeing things from their perspective. Like when I have a meeting with somebody who might want me to do some work for them, for example, I would I would often start the conversation with, tell me your troubles or tell me your problems. What weight can I take off of you?
Yeah.
And then just sort of, if you, I always like to leave a situation where the person opposite me is thinking, crikey, I feel a lot lighter after talking to Tom. I've got,
Yeah,
he's taken this burden off of me and he's going to go and deliver. So, but I can totally relate to that. I, I genuinely sympathize. Like I do try and see. I think it's really important to put yourself, as you say, in the other person's shoes, because they're
well,
just trying to get the job done, aren't they? At the end of the day, they've got
yeah,
their
yeah,
pain, they've got their issues, and they just want someone to come, I'm sure, and tap them on the shoulder and say, "Relax, I've got
yeah.
this."
And in the trust and delegation conversation, that's something that filters down the organisation. But as your organisation grows and gets bigger and gets more successful, the whole thing takes on a different importance, because I think if you are you can be you can you'll run a business of like 5, 6, 7, 8 million, and you can be a control freak and a micromanager. That's actually probably not too difficult. You can't run a 40, 50, 60 million pound organisation with 2, 3, 400 people and be a control freak micromanager.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to create a structure and trust the people in it, and delegate properly to those people and let them do their bit.
I know.
You can't be a successful big organisation and behave like a control freak. It just doesn't work.
You've almost got to be, a way to put it would be, you've almost got to be working on your business, not in your business. You've got to be dealing with the high level tasks and delegate the low level tasks to.
It becomes, your business changes. I noticed, like, from a few years in, when we had maybe 150 guys, to further in when we've got 300, I was suddenly spending more of my time doing like HR and shits, instead of, I'd have none of that come across my desk when we started. And when we finished, that was pretty well all it was.
It was actually going to be one of my questions. I got that impression when you told me when you started at the beginning. You were very much rolling your sleeves up and getting involved. Being hands on with the.
I was running massive programs for the customer, as well as
the business in the background. Right. Okay.
Yeah. But as it gets bigger, what comes across your desk changes, and not necessarily for the better. So it's all the more important that you get the structures in place that can keep it as a good business and running effectively, because you're going to have more and more distractions. So you need more eyes on the ball, because you just don't have that many in your head, and you've got to create a structure and an organisation around you where that can take
and processes, so people don't necessarily need to rely on talking to you all the time. There's a process in place for certain things. I like the way you put it about how things come across your desk. I was going to ask, when you get to a certain point, a certain size, and you're doing more of the working on your business rather than in your business, who's to sort of take off some of your load, if you will. Who was the first? Do you remember who the first person was to help you? So did you get an assistant, for example? Was there a point where you had an assistant, or a back office manager? You said you had someone that worked in the shed, the glorified shed.
Sue was a contract manager. No, not really. My PA at ICL left with me and came to i3, and she continued to sort of look after me, which gives you a bit of headroom, so you got time in your day to go for a wee and stuff like that. But as far as the business, funnily enough, that's all part of the training program, isn't it? Put some white space in your diary so you can have a wee. The number of times you'd look at your calendar and there was literally this back to start to finish relationships with every meeting from 8 in the morning to late at night. it's like no, I think for me, didn't happen immediately. I was lucky in two ways, but didn't happen immediately. But what I did have was at the five guys in the setup. Um, the guy, the older head in amongst all that was Baz, Barry Vaughan. Baz was massive to me. He was my mentor. He was my go-to when things were going wrong. He was just a wonderful guy to have to fall back on, and I was very lucky. We all were very lucky to have him in the team. The project stuff. So if you imagine, like, okay, I've got a business over there, and we're doing this, and we're doing that, and Baz is my mentor, and he's my go-to confidant with all of that. I'm also running like a £500 million program for this customer over here, and most of the guys in the key positions are my guys. And the bit that you got to get to like fairly quickly with stuff like that on the delivery side of it is you need to have a handful of first lieutenants that are there in the team, and they can carry their corner. You know, you're not running every work package that's out there. You've got a couple of guys who take a lot of the strain, and that takes a bit of finding. It takes a bit of finding because in a lot of instances, I found the guys who are more than capable of doing that don't want to do that. They want to be you. They don't want to be the first lieutenant that'll take all of that. They want to be the Rob Story who's running it. And I'm now managing their ego instead of them managing their job.
Right,
you know what I mean?
okay.
That's finding the ones who are who don't let that get in the way is actually really
Who
quite
know
tricky.
their first lieutenants, and that's that's what they're good at. That's
Well,
their value. That's what they're there to do.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to always be like that, but that's what this job is, and for this job, that's what you've got to do. You know, maybe the next one you can be me,
Right.
but
Right
you've
here,
got
right
to
now. This is
here and now in this team that we're in. You've got to be part of the team and stay in the team. And the team is not about egos. That's and this business is quite difficult because it's got some fantastic egos in this business. It's pretty well full of them. And another piece of very sound advice I got when I was persuaded to leave the revenue to resign as a senior civil servant, the guy that kind of persuaded me and looked after me, he's dead now, God bless him, but he was a bit of a Baz, like Baz, he was a terrific mentor for me. He said to me, you know, it's like a $20 trillion business, but believe me, there's not that many people in it. Always exit gracefully. Always exit gracefully. You never know on your way up. You meet most of them again on your way down. And that was amazing advice, and I tried to stick to it because, you know, there's loads of my colleagues and contemporaries who just burn bridges, you know, to scorched earth policy, and in the end, it counts against you. In the end, it doesn't work. You know,
it's not a sustainable. It's
and
not a sustainable model, is it? You've got to keep human.
no,
You know, you've got to keep the
yeah,
human element in the organisation at the whole time.
yeah. Treat people with respect. Always exit gracefully. That was another piece of fantastic advice that I got on my travels, and that's all around maintaining that environment where you work together and trust each other. So you can trust each other, you can delegate, you have got each other's back, but it's vital to get the job done.
Right, sure.
And it's actually an environment people really enjoy working in and grow. You don't always get it, do you? You know, some places you go to, you think, I don't really want to get out of bed today. It's a shithole I'm working in. The people are awful. The job's crap. You know what I mean? It's like it's so different.
You feel it,
Even
don't
if
you?
the
You
job,
feel it when a place is inspired.
yeah, yeah.
Totally.
Even if the even if the job's horrible,
Yeah,
if you've got some good people around you, it makes the day a bit shorter. Yeah.
absolutely. Rob, amazing words of wisdom there. I'm completely conscious of your time. I'm assuming you need to get off.
Yeah, I've got a few more minutes, but
Well,
yeah,
maybe a way to round it up then, Rob, is it's a bit broad brush, but to summarise all that we spoke of today, if you were, um, if a young person came to you and said, "I'd like to, Rob, my ambition is to start a consultancy one day, like what you had," yeah, in sort of a few sentences, what would your words of wisdom, what would your advice be to that person? I
well, my first thing will be to ask him why.
Yeah, yeah, why? Absolutely, start with why.
Why would you want to do that? Um, do you know? I think what I've said. You know what I've said to the kids. Um, it's it's less about. I think it's less about having a vision and a plan. It's more about having an awareness, and the trick is knowing when the bus comes along. The trick is knowing when to get on it or when to let it go past.
Okay.
That that's really that's really I think what makes the difference of whether it works or doesn't work, whether you grow or you don't grow, whether it's a success or not. It's that awareness of when the opportunity's there and when to seize it. Because sometimes it's a good thing just to let it. Yeah, I'll pass on. I'll take a rain check on that one. Thanks very much. Looks wonderful, but no,
Yeah.
thank you. It's when to get on the bus and when to let the bus go. My advice to them would be try and work on that as your instinct rather than have some baked in plan, because the problem with baked in plans is you're not in control of so many of the variables that in all probability it won't work out. And if you can't control it, stop trying, because by definition you can't control it.
It's almost more about recognizing and seizing opportunity, being prepared for it, perhaps as best you
Yeah,
can, but
an awareness.
awareness.
Yeah, an awareness and know when to jump on. And so much of it as well is serendipity. Like you say, you're not in control of a lot of the events that come across your path, and it's working. It's trying to be aware of actually, you know, this is just gold plated. Thanks very much. I'm in. I'm all in your poker game, as opposed to jumping on everything that comes past, because you're going to fail. And don't be too rigid in what you think your plan in your path for the future is, because it probably won't work out like that. Almost certainly won't. Not in our business. You know, I don't know. It might if you're it might if you're a doctor um, or a physicist I don't know.
Yeah.
But in this business, like somebody made a great analogy for me, which was the difference between IT and anything else out there is it's like poetry. So you get into a program. I'm going to build a shopping centre. I've got architects. I've got plans. I know how many bricks per thousand this guy can lay. And you go into an IT program and it's a blank piece of paper. It's like starting to write a poem. Very, very difficult to predict what's going to end up on that page. It's quite a funny business, I think, for something that's an engineering science. It's actually got a lot of art to it. There's a lot of
It's
stuff
so
that,
interesting that you say that, Rob. I've often referred to it as a liberal art. Very
yeah,
much so.
so many variables. There's such a lot that you're just not in control of. It's all about how you manage to get the most out of what's happening around you.
No,
Yeah. Anyway,
amazing. Like I say, fine words of wisdom there. Totally true. Couldn't agree more. But Rob, I think we'll stop it there. I
okay, bud.
I really do appreciate everything that you've said today. I certainly feel like I've expanded as a result of our conversation. I really, really do.
you put you put weight.
Yeah, certainly my knowledge, but just sort of the way my insights and my feelings towards a lot of things have yeah, expanded. So thank you so much. I hope to have you back as I build and grow this. But I think we'll say Rob's story. I think yeah, we'll thank you. I'll thank you again. I think I'll say goodbye.
Okay, mate. You take
Thanks,
care.
Rob. You too.